Cool. Awesome.
All right, welcome and thank you everyone who joins the Internet of Value Foundation New York, episode 69, and for all of those who listen to this valuable information in the future. I hope that everyone who listens to it finds it as valuable and important as I do every day. I know all of the diverse amount of mindsets and perspectives that we have in the space and the information that's spoken about in here, I find will be valuable not only today, but even 50 to 100 years or more in the future. But welcome, Shellfish, and why? Welcome up, though, Shellfish. If you have anything you'd like to speak about, please feel free to start speaking. I'm going to send some invites out and see if we can get some more people in here.
I'm gonna check out all the stuff that you have in the header first and see what I'm what I'm in for today's lessons.
Is there anything in the title that you haven't seen beforehand?
Okay, tell me what ALD is, because I don't think what I'm looking up is what does the abbreviation stand for?
What did you look up when you looked it up? I'm kind of curious.
Well, it's showing health symptoms, so I don't think that's what we're talking about.
Oh, that's a Google response there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So ALD is atomic layer deposition, and so when we start talking about the different types of um, atoms that are being rearranged from a nanometer perspective, right? The smallest that we can quantify today that we're able to robotically interact with, which is 3 nanometers or 3 atoms thick, right? Um, which an atom is comprised of electrons, protons, and neutrons, both uh, having the electrons and the neutrons having different polarities on the quarks that make up the neutron and the electron, and sorry, the neutron and proton, and then the electron, which bounds them together to create the atom. We're only able to interact with a layer of 3 nanometers, and so one of the processes. I bring this up because specifically, I had a very in-depth conversation with somebody who is doing this themselves. I won't name the chip company, but welcome to the space, everybody who just joined. Uh, Neurotic Nurse, nice to see you, and Fridge and um, Cyber and Dutch. Uh, Crap, did I lose my train of thought there for a second? Give me a sec. Sorry.
You were talking about the three
Yeah. So
nanometers and the chip company.
yeah, so there's this interesting right process to the way that they kind of layer these chips together, and so they would have like a gas precursor that could come in and soak the surface, typically like an ammonium chloride, and then they would have their different types of rare earth metals that they would push into the chamber as a gas, and this would create or helps create the layers on the microchips, right? And they call this atomic layer deposition. This is the terminology for the process that is being done for the structural layering of some of the microchips. It's very, very interesting, and so I just put it on the top of the title today because it very much has to do with statistical mechanics and the way that we can mathematically try to use equations to predetermine all of the possible atomic assimilations that could exist in one particular scenario. Almost if you, for example, if you took a room and you had 100 balls, and all of these balls were just had no gravity and they were bouncing around, right? Just like atoms do with their very light mass comparably to the Earth and gravity. And you said, okay, what are all of the possible outcomes that could be theoretically possible for these 100 balls bouncing around in the room, right? You try to statistically uh, and mathematically assimilate a provable function so that you can know all of the types of rearrangements and then classify them in percentages of what is the most typical arrangement and why would one arrangement be different if I interact with this particular ball at this moment. What does that change with the interaction of all of the different arrangements that could possibly occur? And so with that kind of methodology, right, you can start talking about, okay, how can we take this and start putting that kind of thought process into making microchips, and so how can we uh, go from 3 nanometers to 1 nanometer and be able to interact with one atom thick of material ingredients that chemically bound together that we could make microchips out of, right? These silicon based microchips. And the functionality of that would increase the and just like how we've seen over the course of the last decade of the way that the microchips and the actual mechanical tools that we're using have increased in functionality and efficiencies. And so that would astronomically tenfold microchips that we have publicly available today. If just my thought, of course, on that, if we were able to produce more semiconductors inside of these microchips while having the ability to have this interaction at a smaller scale than we do today. That was long-winded.
It was above anything I've ever like studied, so I'm trying to like picture all this stuff in my head. So you're saying they have a vial that's closed off and they put one gas in at a time, and the gas, kind of like oil and water, would slowly sink to the base and layer on top of a chip.
No,
And
they're
then
very
once
they're
that,
they're very high pressures inside of the chamber. So you can think of it more as a box than a vial, right? And there are chambers, and each one of these chambers can have a different type of decompression compression, right? And so you can put but you need a base first. The way he spoke about it is you need a base basically to clean off the surface and remove all possible materials that exist on top of it, right? Even if it's been cleaned and checked. And so things like ammonia and hydrochloride and things like that, and it's a vapor, right? As much as it goes in as a liquid, it vaporizes, and so the high pressure of the gas is what is actually the materials that's interacting at this on the microchip at this small scale.
so it would leave a residue basically.
What'd you say?
It would be leaving a type of residue more than anything. It's not like it's staying gas
Correct.
form. And okay,
Correct.
that's wild.
Yeah, and this is particularly the chips that are being used to create quantum conducting processors. This is how they're doing it. These aren't regular your everyday processing chips like we might think of, like from the company Synaptics, which will have capabilities of having an entire computational system built into like a microchip that's modularly able to be put into like a phone or a computer. These are these are super high conducting um, quantum processor chips. And then so we got also into photonic state chips. We started speaking about a little bit, and some things about how we have these solid interactions with photons and using uh, something like a quantum computer that could process the information that then could interact or give us the know-how to interact with a particular electron or photon that could then interact superposition-wise with another photon is really interesting. But with these solid-state photon chips, I think still having some sort of quantum superconducting computer is like essential for it to exist, I think.
Okay, another thing I'm trying to wrap my head around. So 3 nanometers is smaller than if I took my pen and made a dot on the paper, correct? It's that small? Is that like a good way to visualize it? Like, or am I, is it
Well,
bigger than
well,
that?
you
Okay.
can't visualize it because it's three atoms. We can't see atoms.
So how do they know it's leaving a residue? So I'm like trying, like they're making microchips so tiny that it's 3 atoms, and they're putting gas residue on it. This is like insane. I'm sorry. I'm just like this is kind of like mind blowing that they're able to do this stuff. Wow.
It's one of the techniques that are being used to create the superconducting processing chips. Welcome up, Gene. I'm glad you're here, man. And Ghost and FC. Welcome, guys. And OC. Well, we were talking about quantum processor chips there, Gene. If you have any thoughts or anything you want to throw in on the topic. You there, Gene?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just grabbing my headphones. I was gonna say what you're talking about. Kind of remind me of NVIDIA A100s. They can process like terabytes per second with bandwidth, and just kind of just take that in for a second. Terabytes per second, then bandwidth. Most routers, even if you're using a decent router, is handling like gigabytes per second if you have gigabyte per second internet. So just taking in like, hey, this is what a server can actually process. And this is like some servers have clusters of these. They run clusters of these chips, or even clusters of these GPUs as well, in the chips with the GPUs. So it's just thinking about all that computation power, and then when you combine AI with that, it's insane.
You reminded me to grab a video and put it up top because I just posted this the other day. Nvidia's huge AI chip breakthrough change. But it's just to what Gene was talking about, these A100 chips and I think H100. And there's a couple different like server types that they have put together. But the efficiency metrics for what you today would have for like a 15-year-old server warehouse, you need one server from NVIDIA to basically do what your entire warehouse is processing today. And so, can you imagine an entire warehouse of those processors? I mean, that's definitely where we're heading in the next six to 12 months.
I do remember seeing a video that said that there was like a football field size um warehouse, not a warehouse, but like that's how big the old computers were, and now it's like the size of a refrigerator. And that was out a year ago. That was like the quantum computers, right? That's what we're going into.
Yes, we're definitely moving into a quantum computer era. At least trajectory that we're moving right now. Sorry, go ahead, Gene.
Oh no, it's okay. Go ahead. I was just gonna say it's insane to see how fast it's moving, because it was literally, we were having these conversations like 6, 7 months ago, even 8 months ago. It was very prominent, even in the spaces before. We were just talking about how It was just pretty much AI was going to get to a point where once mass adoption hits, it's going to hit us pretty hard. It's going to be like someone throwing like a 90 mile per hour like pitch. And it's like everyone's going to have to pick up the bat. And it's just wild to look at it. It wasn't that crazy. And then as soon as GPT came out, it was just like, here you are. Here's your AI, built into an application. Here's your AI built in not just any type of application, not just like a web application, but an actual like phone application where here I'm going to put this open AI API key into whichever, platform supports open AI. And then boom, I have, my AI assistant right there with me. It was how fast this stuff is coming. We don't want to be led astray because this should have been a good example already of how fast this stuff is coming. But continue. I didn't mean to divulge it. It's just, taking in, just the magnitude of, how powerful this technology is and, what's to come.
Excuse me, sorry. I just got home from work not that long ago, so I'm eating right now.
So
But
if that was 6 to 8 months ago, Gene, and it keeps like more than halving, so what do you think by August it'll be
no,
even more
we've
complex or
we've hit a pivotal moment at this point. This is what I was speaking about in the reference to how we are 3 nanometers, the ability to interact at this type of level, or 3 atoms, right, thick, basically. We're at this moment where we have more than halved, right? If you look from a Nvidia 370 to a 470, just even that instance, it's more than half the ability or the gigahertz of electrical current that it's able to produce and make malleable bits from. Just like Gene mentioned before with the A100s and these H100s and all of these different new types of servers that are coming out in the next 6 months, that'll probably be in the majority of warehouses that internet providers and I really should say ISP providers, yeah, um, host from the locations. The I forgot what your question though was, Shellfish. So now I think I'm going off topic of what you were saying though. Oh, the magnitude of how fast it's moving. I think we're about to hit this point where it's not going to be every 6 months. It's going to be every like 3 weeks that the technology is going to completely and utterly just change to something more advanced. And I think we're already seeing that where it's less than 6 months. It's like every 2 months there's something new released. The only reason I think we don't see that with like Apple products or big name brand products is because they don't want to overwhelm people, and so it's more about kind of trying to keep people coming back. But as far as the computational abilities go, which is more of an industrial use case, and as much as we're consumers that pay the providers for the service, it's much more back end based, and so I think I think we're going to see a lot of changes technologically advanced because of it, and there'll be those actors who have the technology to be able to provide this computational difference that plays a huge role in the change.
And something I do want to chime in about too is we have to wait for these industries to catch up too. As crazy as it sounds that we're trying to catch up to these industries, no, there's other providers that we have to wait to catch up for us, or just wait to catch up with us because, and we're talking like, user experience model because, you know, just taking a look at like authenticators, um, and I don't mean to, throw the subject off too much because we're going to get back to, because we can talk about Toffoli gates or Toffoli gates. I think it's called Toffoli gates, but there's a pretty much like quantum logic gates at that point. let me talk about that in a second. Authenticators. It uses a SHA-1 hash. If you try to use a SHA-256 hash or a SHA-512 hash, it won't work with an authenticator. So please, it's like there's different things you can use now. You can use like a YubiKey for that. You can use YubiKey for your one-time passcode or your timed one-time passcode, but to be able to match these industries or the technological capabilities of what's to come out with some industries, there's others that actually have to catch up and protect end users too. So it, like Death Ranger is saying, it's gonna every 3 weeks to a month that something new comes out, you know, you not only have to stay ahead in what you're reading, but then stay ahead in what you're using as well. And it's up to us, the end users, to ask for more out of these industries where it's just like, hey, um, when can I change the hash on this? When can I increase it? What capabilities am I going to have? And don't get me wrong, it's not the fearmonger, because if you're using a YubiKey, even though it's a SHA-1 hash that could be broken, you have to use the key itself to be able to initiate the authenticator, which is safe because now you're bringing like the physical element to it. But it's just something that to ask yourself. Some people will say like, "Oh, well, 2FA is a scam." I get their pain point, but it's also what can we do to, enable these industries to upgrade their tech so that we can move alongside this technology at a reasonable pace.
Yeah, you make a very interesting point. Sorry, go ahead, Shelvis.
No, I was just going to say that I think there's just going to be it feels like there's just going to be more and more, like there's going to be two societies going on if people aren't going to jump on board.
Let's give you a back. Come on.
Well, Gene, you make such an interesting point to why we don't have something today where, say, I have a digital identity, and it is provided by the ability to prove my identity through other applications in the form of a ZK rollup, which is owned by the government and authenticated by a third party that authenticates the hash that I'm giving that provides my identity. It's like, you're right, from a server perspective, that ability really didn't exist until the last couple of years. And with this new ability to have such a high transaction output from the servers that could exist, it makes a lot more sense why a system as such could exist in the next decade or so, comparably to the last 20 years. Welcome up, Meta. Go ahead, man.
Thank you. You were saying that, pretty soon, it's gonna be like every 3 weeks when technology changes. You're saying? Is that what you?
Yeah, yeah. I already see in the perspective of where we went from, something, a new piece of technology coming out every year to every 6 months to really it's every 3 or 4 months already.
Right.
I could definitely see it in the near future, because we're at this pivotal moment that if we are able to start upgrading the pieces of technology that we already have, the magnitudes
Yeah.
that come after that, I think, are tremendous.
There was a Netflix series. What was it called? Someone else talking. Sorry about that.
No, go ahead, Meta.
I saw a Netflix series. I mean, I guess the name sucks because it says killer robots, but what they meant was autonomous killer robots that like kill when they think it's right, like on their own, right? That the military uses. But then there was one part of it where it's talking about this pharmaceutical lab, whatever, like does studies. So the guy, like, I guess they were saying put a 0 to a 1, whatever, because 0 meaning that it didn't harm the genome. I mean, the genetic makeup of the person. Then he's like, I just changed 0 to a 1, and then it made like 40,000 different, like basically biochemicals, basically like recipes for biochemicals, like 40,000 different recipes for biochemicals. He left it overnight. The machine, the AI was working on it itself. Next morning, he saw what it did, and then he was like, "Oh, this is crazy." Because all we did, and then like supposedly the White House called him and asked him what they do. He's like, all we had was this his Mac computer, and just the software and AI, and that could be dangerous in the wrong hands.
Yeah,
Well, anyway, what I wanted to say, I'm sorry, what I wanted to say was that yeah, like that was a matter of a day, and you're saying 3 weeks. It could probably be quicker than that with AI, like solving like difficult things that take months.
well, it's not about just solving the issues, but producing some sort of actionable tool that could be then expressed through an intent of somebody else's use case, right? So, actually creating, right, robots creating robots, right? Like these things take time, but we are moving at such an astronomical rate that the ability to create new techniques of new tools that have magnitudes of greater efficiency than the tools we have today, I think we're at like this pivotal moment where we're going to go from zero to 1,000, right? Like it's comparably to where we are at this moment, where we've over the last 20 years went from 0 to 70. But Shellfish, you had your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're gonna cut me off. That was like one of the whole big things about like the Mayan pyramid stuff. They were saying that like the base pyramid represented the knowledge we had in like the first half of the what is it, 16 billion years of the existence of our galaxy. So you would take that in half, and then you just keep halving it, and it was then like the last year was compounded, and then it goes to months, and then weeks, and then days, and then singularity. Have you ever seen that that projection at all? Anybody?
Glad I haven't.
It's kind of going on the same premise though, like how it's just going to keep compounding down into faster and faster. Don't you think that's kind of a similarity, or no?
What is singularity at this reference?
Well, they in the chart that I was looking at, it was talking about how in the last stages it went from um, what was it, planetary to galactic to universal. Like it compounded, 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 and in the last few days, going from galactic to universal, it was like in the last day. Um, so I would imagine it was more like a singularity moment that way.
Is singularity when our augmented intelligence is on par with biological human intelligence, right? Or possibly a little bit higher.
You rugged for me so bad, Meta. I don't know what you said.
Oh, sorry. Singularity is when augmented intelligence is on par with human biological intelligence, or a little bit higher, right? That when they're like we're at the same level.
To
It
kind of
supposedly
help answer that,
surpasses us, doesn't it?
to help answer it, singularity is already here. It's not to scare you guys, but singularity's here um, through even GPT, like natural language processing.
Right.
Um, it's already here. Singularity is essentially now you have like this AI. You can start monetization with AI. So it's already here. But what our concept of singularity is from the previous conversations that we've held, whether or not we've actually you know have listened to certain topics, from even if it was like from different discussions or even movies we've watched. Um, yeah, our definition of singularity is different from what's already out there, but it's interchanging.
So what would you say the definition today is for singularity? Because what I read it was that when AI is on par with human intelligence or a little bit higher.
Singularity, and that's a very um, it's a very large question you asked. So I
Thank
do
you.
want to give you props for that. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's a very large question you asked. Singularity comes down to chatbots, and there's a learning model that's being used with how we use these chatbots, how we're how we're using even GPT or anything else along those lines. That that's where you kind of have to measure it, because now we're all in a learning model itself, and
Right.
it's but then you whether it's supervised learning, unsupervised learning, or if it's reinforcement learning.
Right. And I just want to go on the record and say I'm not against AI or augmented intelligence, artificial intelligence, because I mean we have to get into that because the rest of the world is getting into it, and if we don't, I mean, let's say as a country, right? I'm thinking as a country, if we don't get into that, then we're going to be left behind, and we won't be able to catch up with the other nations. But yeah, I mean, it could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing, just like with anything, just like with a gun.
Yes, it
No, I was having some sort of technical issue there. I'm sorry about that. I don't know. For some reason, are other people in the audience able to hear me, listeners? Are you guys? If you are able to
I
hear
think
me,
you're
can you put a
rugged, man.
thumbs up,
Okay,
please.
I don't
In the
hear
audience.
Death Ranger. Do you hear him?
Not
No,
the
I was
speaker,
having
not
some
you.
sort of
As
technical
okay,
issue
as the
there. I'm sorry
audience.
about
Okay,
that.
cool.
I don't
Because
know. For some
on my
reason,
PC, it
are other
shows me
people
as a
in the
listener
audience
still.
able to hear me, listeners? Are you guys? If you
Uh,
are able to hear me, if you could put a thumbs up, please, in the audience. Not the speaker, not you though. As an audience. All right, cool. Because for some reason on my PC it shows me as a listener still, and I don't know. All right.
no,
All
you
right.
did go down as a listener, but now you're back up.
Yeah. I know it's just weird computer glitch going on right now for some reason about that. Was that NY? Was that mean thumbs down? You're not able to hear me? I don't know. Anyway, what was it you had said before? Oh, singularity. All right, right. So singularity is really just a term to explain the intent of indifference, and so we call singularity this moment of such an indifference that you feel strange by it, and so we call this this is like the singularity moment, right? There's a large indifference, or you're particularly marketing somebody else, or terming someone else as different than yourself. That's also like a singular, right? An individual as a singular. The reference of the word singularity. I think we think of it as as maybe more than what the reference of definition of the singularity actually is. But to Gene's point, then that makes a lot of sense, right? The word singularity referencing an indifference or another could, you know, could be referenced to a large language model that had the ability to have input from like a natural language model that had a large amount of input data on it.
I got you. I mean, I'm thinking singularity now as like instead of a system of networks, just like itself. I guess. Uh, yeah. Think and why you had a question?
Welcome up, NY. You there, man?
I can't hear him. The
He
last time I dipped out on a space like this, I didn't get back in, so I'm afraid to leave.
he may have came up by accident. He may have been working right now. I sent him an invite earlier, so he may have accidentally hit it and came up. But it's fine. We can keep speaking. What was it you had said, Gene, before? Because I was rugging. I didn't get to hear what you were speaking about.
Sometimes I say stuff, you just gotta hear it when I say, oh, I'm just kidding. You know what I'm saying? Singularity. I was saying singularity's here, but it's not. Our definition of singularity and our perception of singularity, it was basically what you were saying before. Is our perception of singularity is completely different than what's out there now, but that's going to change soon enough as the technology evolves. And I said it was just a natural language process. So natural language processing, and it comes through even through the form of, chatbots, text generation, text understanding, information extraction, machine translation, sediment analysis. So think of like two circles, right? Like two circle graphs for a second. But if you combine the circles, there's like another little circle, oval, and inside. I'm trying to visualize it for you. So on the right, think about it like on the right side, there's linguistics, and then on the left side, there's artificial intelligence. Natural language processing is within the middle of it. So Singularity Net also Singularity, it's actually commercialized through Singularity Net. So if you were to look up Singularity Net, I think it's like singularitynet.io. I think you can actually find some of their AI tools.
Oh, you're talking about Ben Goertzel's. I have a video of his posted up top also. Ben Goertzel, Singularity, Sparks of AGI, and GPT. So go ahead, Meta, and Zara, welcome up. I'm glad you're here.
So you're saying singularity, meaning that if I were to talk to it, it would have set responses for whatever I say. Is that what you're saying? And also I wanted to say, is it self-aware? Is that self-awareness or not yet? Gene.
In some cases, based off of what it's learning, based off of the answers it can give, it's a chatbot's self-awareness for now. Because again, you're going off of, some people think of like Singularity as, oh snap, we have this cloud for the Terminator, and all these Terminators know what we're doing and all this other stuff. It's not that serious yet, or it may not even get to that point. But it's just the fact that think about it like predictive text, because it's not just chatbots. Think about predictive text when you're on your iPhone and or any of your phone, your keyboard, and you're typing in words and you're not able to spell a word correctly, but it already can tell what word you're trying to type in, so it can autocorrect to that word for you. That's how you can think of like the predictiveness of Singularity.
I'm gonna do some more study on that, man. Dang. Thank you so much.
The question really, Meta, I would have for you is how do you prove another is self-aware? I mean, you can go through these things like in the Alan Turing test, right? Which a chat GPT can already get past an Alan Turing test, right? There are other quantifications of different tests that are already out that are much more firm in the results comparatively to trying to test the cognition of another individual. But even past that, right, you can input cognition, or the ability to have some sort of cognitive ability to understand the data that's being given to it and interpret it in a certain way based off of the identity that's being built from the information that's given to it cognitively. What determines something to be self-aware?
Right. What is the Howey test for AI?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a Howey test for AI, but I would say that every single thing that exists, to me, every particle of existence is somewhat self-aware. I mean, to suggest that the fact that every single atom in your body has been bound together by mass to create the organoid substance that you are, which produces an electrical current through it, that you then retain a bridged thought process of what you've perceived to have a notion of existing, right? And then we call that your brain and your synaptics, and then you make decisions based off of that. I mean, to think that all of that by itself just happens to bind together to create all of this, I think there is some sort of cognitive understanding from a subatomic level. And so, once again, to the question, how do you prove something else, another object, is self-aware or not? Just because the chair is a chair and you can break the chair and the chair will probably never react as a chair, does that make the chair not self-aware? No, I don't think that does answer that question. I think it just means the chair is a chair. I don't think it has anything to do with the actual energy behind the chair. And John, I'm glad you came up, man. Or Zara, if either of you guys would like to speak, you guys haven't yet, so please feel free to jump in.
What's up, Death Ranger, and everyone else? Hope you guys are doing well. I wanted to chip on this idea of the singularity because, from my perspective, the singularity is, if you look at, say, astrology, right, and you've got a black hole, the point of singularity within a black hole is the point of no return, right, where you go so close to the black hole that nothing else escapes, and it's sort of this idea of going so far beyond that you can't get back, right? And in regards to AI, the way I see the singularity is a point where AI becomes so sophisticated and it becomes basically so advanced that we can't really stop it from progressing. So it's like a definitive, almost like a line, right? Where you go too far, or it gets so advanced that it actually can't be stopped. That's my idea of the singularity. And like you were saying, Death Ranger, it's hard to define, especially with like a code base, because you got to sort of identify what consciousness is and self-awareness, right? And we're still sort of juggling with that concept even in like the animal kingdom, right? What has intelligence? How do we actually define intelligence? So there's a lot of things to think about. I think it's a super interesting and complicated topic, but yeah, the way I see things like ChatGPT, although it is artificial intelligence, I don't think it's to the point where it's beyond the singularity, because at the end of the day, from my perspective anyway, it's basically just sourcing data, reorganize it, and then relaying it back to you, like almost like a Google on steroids, right? It's not able to act in its own self-interest. And when that does happen, then I guess the metaphorical flip is the switch is being flipped. That's when things get really interesting.
And leading off of that, John, I'll say my thoughts on when I hear the word singularity, and maybe this will make sense and resonate with you. I think we are the singularity. And so the reason for that being is, by definition, singularity being this indifference that creates this strange feeling, right? Or this indifference from you yourself notion that there is another singular. We only control ourselves. And so the notion of thinking something else is indifferent is truly dependent on the opinion of ourselves. And so we actually are the manifestation of what the belief of the singularity is, or the intent behind the singularity. Because in reality, the notion that any of this is different than us is really just because of the perceived identity that we have to be moving in a singular pace of time, right? We think of time as this flow of one direction, and we hold this identity from it. But I find it interesting to think that all of the atoms in your body in the next 7 minutes will be different atoms, and you have trillions of neutrinos from the sun and the early days of what we think with the Big Bang, of these pieces of massive energy flowing through you that are changing your pieces of massive energy. And all of this energy seems to be attached by this binding web we call dark energy or dark matter today. It's like relativity in the sense of like singularity truly at any stage is us, because we are what the belief of singularity would be behind the intent of what we think we are experiencing. Was that a lot? Was that a tongue twister? I'm sorry.
You're a deep guy, Death Ranger. You're a deep guy.
I feel like I went a little too deep at the moment there for a second. But like this thought though of a black hole, right? This notion that you reach singularity in a black hole. And I think that moment would be the indifference of you understanding that you came out of a white hole. And so the black hole maybe was a completely different universe than where you are at this moment. And so the singularity is truly you are in a different possible universe, or possibly just a different galaxy. Which would definitely be a singularity. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's a there is a singular moment of indifference from the state of organization of where you were to where you are. So that definitely fits the definition in my mind.
And I like how you both put that. Question for the both of you: would you determine even like a black hole or even a white hole, um, based off of, could it just be, AI or even linguistics being learned from, one of the three learning models, whether it's just supervised learning, reinforcement learning, or unsupervised learning? When I say the definition of, or what would you consider a black hole, what if its learning model is only supervised learning and not the other two? Or what if it was only one for, let's say, a predetermined amount of time, and then it switched over. Let's say it was supervised learning for 6 months, and then later on, it moved to reinforcement learning.
Are you talking about like a computational intelligent system?
Yeah, or in general. It's just a question I have, just to pick your brains.
What was the question though? I'm sorry, Sheen.
What which your definite to there was a definition given of what a black hole can be perceived as, or what a black hole can be analyzed as, or even, you talked about a white hole. Can you kind of group that based off of the learning models? Because if it's only, what if there's AI only learning only on a supervised learning model, and it hasn't gone to like a reinforcement learning model, or hasn't even experienced a unsupervised learning model? And I'm just saying it's just supervised for that. What if it's unsupervised? What if the black hole is it doesn't matter if it's supervised, reinforcement, or unsupervised learning that determines whether or not it's a black hole. Either one of those one choices could be a black hole. But does the second model after the fact make it the white hole? Like what would you say would change it up at that point?
Well, I think, and this is a very interesting question because, what's the term? I'll have to think about it for a minute here. But for a computational system to accurately recreate a black hole and simultaneously, through time, interpret the black hole's mass by every single atom that would exist inside the black hole, it would take the same amount of energy that the black hole takes to exist. And so it's a very interesting question because, theoretically, you can run mathematical algorithms and computational tests to theoretically think what would occur, and then try and, if you get the right mathematical equation, lead that over a large period of time that could be divulged in a very short period of time of a test to lead to the outcome of, okay, this mass could create some sort of warp in space and time, and the energy lead out to somewhere, with the thought of like quantum superposition, could technically, theoretically lead to somewhere else that exists in the universe. The universe is very large. But it's just tests. And so until you actually built the tool that could then find a black hole or create a black hole and then do that physically, you'd only have it theoretically as a test. Unless we were able to provide the same amount of energy that it would take to create the black hole, then we could prove this test to be possible without a reasonable doubt.
Was not expecting, such an impactful answer from you, Death.
Yeah, and there's a term for it, and I can't think of it right now. It's really bugging me right now. It's just give me a couple more minutes. If anybody has anything else though they'd like to jump in with, or your thoughts on what I said, Jean or Jean.
I'm still trying to process it all, because you just give me a different perspective. But I want to hear anyone else's answers. as well, because it's just a question I have. I mean, there's no right answer. I just, we've gotten into this topic, and I just want to see, different people's viewpoints, because what I look at or what I learn, that's not the end all be all. That's not the truth per se. It's not going to be the ultimate truth. You know, there's more information out there that we have to learn to evolve, and we're always going to be, in a sense, truth seekers. So just hearing different opinions about it, just from that question alone, or even from what you've talked about it, I just want to hear different people's perspectives, because sometimes this stuff goes over my head, and it takes a while for me to just buckle down and learn it, or come to that mythology. I would say even the mythology behind it, or even the mindset behind even asking the question, or understanding what I'm asking before I ask it. I know there's so much more I can learn.
And this is a quick example. A black hole is an AI learning model for black hole quantum computing, right? If you were to teach the AI what to do. It's not to scare people because we have quantum resistance.
Because, for instance, I think of like the black hole. And this is a quick example. A black hole, an AI learning model for a black hole of quantum computing, right? If you were to teach the AI what to do. And it's not to scare people because we have quantum resistance, but a black hole could be essentially, it could be anything, but I could think of a black hole as, teaching this AI reinforced by, quantum logic gates to crack passwords of modern ciphers, right? Of modern ciphers using Shor's algorithm, right? But what if we can use something to where, okay, it knows how to do that, but it's stored that data. It's already stored that data, right? Even if it was a reinforcement learning where it's learned how to store that data, what if there's now supervised learning to where, okay, here's all these passwords, all these things that have been cracked. Here's an intrusion detection system, or here's something here that can, constantly update this database of, this person has these passwords linked to them to this email. These passwords are now cracked. You now have to change these passwords.
So what is our universe made of? In the 1800s, people were still wondering what's matter made of. The fact that we see the physics that
the world's ending around me, to, okay, I can see where this system is helping me improve the security around me.
So you're saying that the AI, we're going to call it, is going to automatically change those passwords because it sees that someone's cracked the passwords, like basically patch it up for you?
Yeah, it'll prompt you. It'll prompt you to change it. Not like we don't already have that, but it just be something more immediate to where it's almost real time. Like this, there's data breach happened, and now real time you get this notification. Go ahead, Meta.
I mean, to even save you time, like you don't even care if it tells you or not. Like you just want to look at the reports later on and say how many times it's changed your password or something, right?
The term I was looking for was irreducible computation, and so it kind of explains it in the term, right? It's there's no way to recreate the exact atomic structure mathematically of a black hole or anything of a large energy output without the energy that it takes to actually create the black hole itself, because of the computation irreducibility. And I totally came in the middle of what you guys were talking about, so I'm sorry. Keep going though, Meta.
No, he was saying that. I mean, go ahead, Gene. You know what you were saying. I know what you were saying, but go ahead. You explain it better than me.
Oh, I mean, we pretty much explained it, and you just came in and answered. You pretty much answered that thought you had before that you wanted to tell us, Death Ranger. I was pretty much saying that, with even the supervised learning model, if it's able to, and it doesn't have to be just with passwords. It could be for like spam for emails, right? It's able to predict. It's able to help predict with the future data, what's susceptible to, breaches, or, hey, you have this password that was, this person is not likely to use an actual, password manager to change their password to a password of, a good length or characters for that matter. So we're going to go ahead and do that for them. Or because we know that they have a security policy to change their password every 3 months, right at the 2 month and 2 week, right at 2 months and 2 weeks, we're going to go ahead and change the password for them and store it for them so that it's easier for them to sign into their accounts. Or we'll just go ahead and add this to your keychain, your Apple keychain.
Well, this is part of the quantum war, right? When it comes down to it, that quantum processing and quantum becomes so becomes so abundant. We have this quantum processor war, and in reality, what it ends up being, it's just interesting because FinTech actually asked me a question on it the other day, and I'm gonna go back to what he had asked me about this, almost predicting the future, right? We're gonna have this quantum supremacy war. That was the word I was looking for before. Where you're going to have these quantum processors that are basically saying, no, I can guess the future better than you. Okay, no, I'm going to guess the future better than you. And so in the sense of like keeping protection for these private keys, the rotation of these private keys will be done by a computational system that's using some sort of quantum processor that's guessing the future outcome to protect the keys, rather than the quantum processor or computational system that's trying to guess the next outcome of what the keys are going to be so they can break the system and be nefarious and malicious. And so this whole quantum supremacy war.
Now, Gene, I'm trying to think how we get from passcodes to black holes and white holes.
Because they both are very much intertwined with each other when it comes to computational ability. Something about computational irreducibility, or thinking about any set of tests, you'll find it very interesting that even the most simple tests, or the most complex tests, will have the simplest mathematics behind the test that is very equivalent to many other pieces of what shapes our reality, right? Like one kind of explained that a little bit of a little twisty. I think Stephen Wolfram really says it better than I do, although I'm trying to quote a great man, great mind. But when we start using these computational systems to mathematically try and hide a password, the same mathematical equation may be used very similarly to hide a passcode. And so I think it's very interesting if you think about it like that.
You know what? I get it now. I get it now, because you could create some sort of black hole mathematically as well, right? Is that what you're getting to?
Well, yeah, I mean, other than CERN and the Hadron Collider, we haven't been able to actually create any sort of black holes, at least unless you know of them publicly.
I'm sorry, guys. I didn't drink my coffee. That's what I wasn't thinking of. I got you guys.
It's late in the afternoon for coffee.
It's always good time for coffee, man. Okay, so, Gene, you said that we already have. Did you say we already have quantum computing, and we also have? You said, well, this is two different subjects, but with quantum computing, so that's already out there, huh?
Oh yeah, we do. We already have quantum computers because we have just through IBM alone. They've already started, quantum computing. They already have they've already implemented like Shor's and Grover's algorithm into that, and there's only one portion. There's other, algorithms they've applied to the quantum computer, but that's where it's Qiskit. If you were to look up Qiskit, you could actually see, the different subjects or even learning models, or even they have lessons on it before you even, try it out. So you get a deeper understanding of what you're using before you're using it.
How do you spell that? Qiskit?
Qiskit, it's like Q. So Q as in Quebec, I as in India, S is in Sierra, K is in Kilo, I is in India, and then T is in Tango.
Cool. Thank you.
Sorry, can you repeat that again, Gene? I had a call for a second.
I asked him, he spoke about Qiskit, about quantum computers. I asked him to spell it out for me.
What was it?
Not Nesquik, but Qiskit.
Qiskit.
Yes. Quebec, India, Sierra, Kilo, India, Tango.
Teaching resource?
Yes.
Cool.
So in that video that I saw yesterday on Netflix, they were saying that the United States and Russia, I guess the United Nations went ahead and have all countries say that that these robots or AIs cannot pull the kill switch, basically kill somebody on its own at its own will.
No,
but the United States and Russia declined to do that, to accept that.
Well, correct. They're not part of the United Nations, as far as I understand. They signed a document back in 2013, the United Nations, about a robotics law. If you want to look up everything that was signed, just look up robotics law 2013 United Nations, or just look up robotics law United Nations. There was a large international agreement about the lethal use of robotics and what is allowed in war.
Right. And the U.S. and Russia declined to agree to a term where they wouldn't use autonomous robots or AI to pull the trigger themselves. So, but basically, the United Nations wanted to do that where only a human would be able to call the shot, but the U.S. and Russia don't care about that.
I think a robotics unit might, with the proper tooling sets and functionalities, it might honestly make better decisions than humans might make on the moment. So I think there is some sort of functionality that could be beneficial. But regardless, there shouldn't be war in general. I mean, just the term of it, right? Talking about it, and nowadays there's no need for it. It's just a power hungry sense of intent creation.
It's just barbaric, man. It's just barbaric. It's just going backwards. You're right. But I mean, they say it's funny because the nation says we're going backwards, but then the top nations are still fighting wars and obliterating each other while they're saying at the same time being hypocritical and saying it's barbaric.
History repeats itself.
Right. I mean, I'm thinking. I don't want to. I guess I won't talk anymore negative about AI or robotics.
Well, no, I mean, this is, you're not talking negative about it. It's actually something very important in the sense of history repeating itself. Very often we see the abused become the abuser. And so in this sense of creating, which in sense, I know people think of these tool sets and possibly like a cybernetic being something separate of an entity or an identity from what we would consider to be us. But I think the notion of when we talk about superior beings or like a super highly intelligent, advanced organism, we're speaking about ourselves, merging with this technology rather than creating a singular difference from ourselves with the technology.
Yeah, and I keep referencing the Netflix documentary I saw yesterday, but I mean, it's nothing that I didn't know already because I learned a lot from this show. But thank you. But they were talking also about like attacking in swarms because one guy, I forgot what the company was, but he played a lot of StarCraft or something, and he was like, he created the drones that would attack in swarms, I guess, like come together and follow you in swarms, and they would just talk to each other, like they would talk together, like birds flying together and stuff like that. It's just crazy, and they tested it out. One guy was like running, and all these drones started following him. They weren't shooting at it, they were just testing it. I'm like, what the hell? Could you imagine that just like chasing you if you like didn't pay your parking ticket?
Well,
pay your parking ticket.
When it comes into like things like of morality or I guess instances of these types of actions, I really don't think we'll have any sort of issue with that in our country. Although it is quite funny when you do say that, Meta.
No, I mean, hopefully there's people in power who have who are logical and like no way they don't want something like that to happen. But I can understand on the battlefield, yeah.
If there was a robot that was trying to enforce people to pay their parking tickets, the
meter drones
people would dismantle it.
I'm sorry, that sounds just so funny with you just even saying it out loud.
I know it would be dismantled so quickly though by Patreons and other citizens. Something like that would never fly.
Wait.
That was funny. You said would never fly.
Meta, do you think the same drones would go after the little baby that steals the candy at the grocery store?
Oh yeah, definitely, like a micro drone or something.
do you remember the Seinfeld episode where like the elderly people kept stealing batteries because they're like, we're old, we don't need to pay for batteries. You can stick the drones after them.
That reminded me that when I was in high school.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember in high school too. There was a kid that stole someone's batteries on their Walkman or whatever it was, and in drama class, the teacher's like, "We're gonna turn off the lights, and whoever has your batteries, just throw it in the middle. We're not gonna like catch you." Like, I was like, "Damn!" So everybody like just threw their batteries in the middle. Like, what the hell? Because they wanted to get it over with, because they wanted to do drama and shit. I'm sorry for cussing. Yeah, drama helped me out. Thank you.
Free sample for you. I'm sorry, Death. I cut you off.
Nope. I cut you off, and then I dropped something. T-Boon, though, welcome to the space, and Shellfish, you can keep talking, please. Go ahead.
No, I was actually enjoying Meta. He was actually entertaining.
Oh, thank you.
I like that he asks questions that I ask, and it's not always silly Shellfish questions.
I ask silly questions. Thank you.
He's my Mars crew.
What'd you say?
We're doomed.
Meta, we'll just be sitting there playing cards and laughing our butts off together on Mars. Nothing else going on. We'll just be hanging out.
I'm gonna take like a lot of AIs with me then.
Well, you guys to play cards while you're in the cars, because the cars will display a 3D animated virtual reality setting that while you are on your way to dinner, you guys can play cards together across the world.
No, this is on Mars, Death.
Yeah, this is like
he's
multiplanetary.
He's part of my Mars crew.
That's fine. Multiplanetary will distribute a signal, shooting the electrons from one end of the Earth to the other end of Mars. So problem.
Hey, but this is a one-way.
I feel like Meta. I feel like Elon is like all about just leaving us on Mars and never going back. He's like, take Shellfish and Meta and just drop them.
Hey, if you can guarantee like oxygen and food and whatever, like then I'll go. But
can't even guarantee oxygen and food here.
I'm still talking, right?
Oh, did I just press the wrong button? That was weird.
No, I'm just. Hey, T-Boon. I think T-Boon wanted to say something.
Yeah, you guys were talking about drone and like law enforcement and stuff, and that was pretty wild because I'm at the point in life where I'm thinking I need to start making like EMP guns or something just because, you know, just to have it, just in case, right?
T-Boone, I was thinking the same thing. Like, what would you do to like fight off these bots coming at you like a small little micro like electromagnetic field?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, you could get like you could rip apart an old microwave and literally create an EMP weapon, and it would probably do the trick. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to research it a bit more, but I literally had a friend who built one, and it worked really well.
you can make a business out of that, bro.
Honestly, you know, hey.
Yeah, but the thing is if you do that, then you know they can just create battery packs that have reverse polarities.
Yeah, or just, you know, like a Faraday cage type.
Oh yeah, right. Lock the actual digital components in a Faraday cage. The rest of it's
right.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if we do have a killer robot epidemic going on, they're going to be, you know, EMP proof. So.
Well, you could probably kill like the first versions of them. Then, like when they get updated, then you're messed up.
Yeah, you can also create, instead of you know, making a digital robot, you can do a mechanical based one. Damn, what's the
analog?
Analog. Thank you. You're the best. You can do analog, right, and just, you know, have all of the weight functions built into the robot. It's very, very, very high tech, but definitely doable.
It's like high tech, low tech. It's like very complicated. It's like the Apollo missions. Like, you know, we couldn't do that today, but somehow they figured it out.
Yeah, they lost I guess the information on how to get back from the moon.
Yeah, I mean, well, at least like for us to try to replicate that again with their technology, like with what they had at the time, with the level of computing power they had, etc. I mean, like we would be clueless. I mean,
our cell phones have more power than the entire computational system.
Yeah, for real. So it's pretty wild that even was a thing. Oh, but also, Death, when you mentioned the concept of being able to play a game with somebody else, like in the car, you know, and they could be on a different planet at that. I just thought that was actually kind of a cool concept, because I think in the future, you know, obviously with autonomous driving right around the corner, I think there's going to be a massive explosion of like in-car entertainment content, and it's going to be a massive economic opportunity. And so, you know, imagine just like with Tesla specifically, like you just, anybody else who owns a Tesla, you could just, you know, see, oh, so-and-so is driving their car right now. Let me send them a like a game request to play chess right now, or whatever. And then like you could just enjoy that company with somebody, maybe have like a video chat or something going, and you're just kind of in the car waiting. And also on top of all that too, I just think the whole advent of self-driving is going to just rapidly and radically change the economy. Like I think it's going to be a $10 trillion opportunity just as a whole, as an industry. It's going to be insane, because if you think about just the hassles involved with like going to the airport and getting on a plane and being groped by security and fucking going through all that, and then the time that you have to give yourself just in case there's traffic and you might miss your flight and all this kind of stuff, whereas you could just go onto your app and just say, hey, you know, autonomous car, pick me up at my house. You just like load the car up with your stuff, and then you sit in the car or go into your destination for 5 hours or whatever. But it's like your space, like entirely. You could be productive during that time. Whereas, you know, if you're going to be going and traveling through the airport and stuff, I mean, there's a lot of wasted time involved with that. So it's like, especially if it's at cost parity with flying on a plane, I think that is going to be an option that more people choose instead of flying on a plane, if it's like a domestic, you know, trip, even if it's a really long distance trip. So I know I've just completely changed the subject, but
yeah, but T-Boone, what if the autonomous car like has your license in KYC, and it's like T-Boone owes like parking tickets, and then takes you like to court or something?
Well, so I was saying, like, imagine you have an app like Uber, but instead of, I mean, it would probably be like a Tesla app. I'm assuming they're gonna just integrate that. They're gonna have their own, like, once they figure out full self-driving completely, and it's regulated and the whole nine, then I expect that they're going to basically come out with an autonomous Uber competitor that someone could just like ride hail as if they were calling an Uber, but the car just drives itself to you, and then you get in. And as far as like any liabilities associated with like the car, parking somewhere illegally and getting a ticket or anything like that, Tesla does have an insurance company that they've like built as an arm of their business, and I assume that that is going to absorb all of that kind of stuff associated with like the car doing something that is a liability, or if it does happen to get into an accident, or if there is a fatality or something like that, like the company will pay for it, I expect. Because that is a big question, that I was wondering too, is like, who's responsible? Like, you're in the car and then it like drives into a bus and kills somebody, like, are you at fault when you're not driving? That's something that really needs to be figured out, but I'm assuming that it would be Tesla's liability, at least if it is a full self-driving car. Like,
yeah, it would be their liability, and that's why they wouldn't release full selfing unless they were sure that they were ready to cover that cost, and it'd be a very minimal cost, if anything.
Right.
Going to what you said though, Meta, about the parking tickets, I kind of think more along the lines of T-Boone, where I really don't think car ownership is going to be a big thing in the future. I think it's really about renting the service when you want to use it at that moment, and just knowing that there's security behind it. If I want a vehicle at my house in 10 minutes, it's going to be there. It's automated. It's going to drive me where I want it. It's going to drop me off. It's going to be there if I want it to pick me up. And and I know as soon as I get in that vehicle, I can plug my phone right in, and everything on my phone is going to go right on the dashboard, and boom, I can have this virtual augmented reality service where the ride, and just like you said, T-Boone, I think that it was really articulated well. The amount of actually consuming hours for entertainment is going to magnify much more, because we have all of the people who still would have jobs, who would be traveling, and you talk about your trip into work every single day and the commute, and so there's a lot more hours that can be used for entertainment purposes. Go ahead, Meta.
Sorry, I keep losing service, so I missed a lot of what you just said. I don't even know if you can hear me.
I hear you.
Sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. It's all right. I was having the same thing with my phone today, so.
I just remember reading something about in Europe where they were going to basically ban the ownership of cars by 2030 or 2035. I think it was about gas cars, but also I think they were trying to ban the ownership of cars in the European Union by 2030. So yeah, what you're saying is possibly going to become a reality, and they're probably going to build more like autonomous cars and like rail systems, whatever the hell they're going to do, autonomous buses or something.
I mean, I think the market is going to naturally push us in that direction, just like I think that the market is naturally going to push us in the direction of EVs. And I hate that the government feels like they need to push this shit, because they don't. I think that just the market forces are going to naturally get us in that direction. I think that the cost associated with building an EV is going to continue to go much, much further down as we achieve real, true economies of scale at the level of ICE cars. ICE cars have been built for over 100 years. Like, they've pretty much figured it out. And you can maybe squeak out a little bit of efficiency here and there, but EVs are novel. They're very new, and there's a lot of innovation going on. There's a lot of economies of scale to unlock. It's like every order of magnitude that you increase production, you can save, I don't know what percentage of cost, but it's fairly substantial, especially at scale. So it does matter. And so I think that, we're already pretty much at price parity between EVs and ICE engine cars. But I think that, in the next half a decade, it will be a no-brainer. Like cost-wise, it's already cheaper cost of ownership-wise, but I think it's going to be a no-brainer just all around. Like you get a car that gets 500 miles of range. I mean, it can get you wherever you need to go on a regular basis. It's very reliable. It's not going to have a lot of maintenance issues. There's not a lot of moving parts to fix, and it's like cheaper than any other regular car. I mean, it's like who isn't going to buy that? And I think we're approaching that point, and it's going to be a just exponential growth. It already is, but it's going to be really noticeable, I think, in the latter half of this decade. And one more thing I wanted to say is that, regarding the whole autonomous driving aspects and how I mentioned that being a $10 opportunity, imagine also just the investment opportunity. I mean, we're all pretty much investors here, in the crypto space and stuff. Imagine the investment opportunity of just buying your own fleet of these vehicles and just essentially allowing them to go out and do their thing all day and all night. I mean, they're just making you money 24/7 autonomously. That, I think, is a massive deal. And it could probably, I don't know, like imagine if the car could pay for itself within a year. Then also on top of that, it's like, okay, you own a car. It's already cheaper than a regular car. But it also has the ability to drive itself around and pick up people and provide them that Uber-like service. So when it's sitting in a parking lot all day long when you're at work, what if it could work for you and make you money while you're making money with your time? Like that is a completely different. I mean, that's going to change everything. I don't think people understand this at all. It's like it's such a massive, massive deal, and that's why Tesla's working so hard to actually achieve this full self-driving. And I know a lot of media and all these companies and stuff are shitting all over it, thinking it's this terrible thing and it's so unsafe and this and that. And it's like, look at the opportunity here. I mean, it's such a big deal. So that's all I'll say on that.
Yeah, and to your point, I think it's going to be a very...
Hey, Dad, sorry, I can't hear you. I'm going to step down and then come back up because I don't know why Twitter's messing up. So I'll be right back.
I mean, that's what a lot of people say. It's the time now to invest in augmented intelligence, systems like that, because that's where the money's going to be in the future.
Well, this is going to be a short-lived thing for people to get in my opinion, to become millionaires and billionaires from that type of ownership of industry, because just to, like T-Boone was saying, right? If the price of the car becomes so cheap to produce, if I'm a car producer, why do I even want to sell you a car? If I can build a car that's going to maintain itself for 100 years, I'd rather rent you the car than sell you the car, because I'm going to make profit for a much longer period of time. And so I think those who get in early to that EV industry and can own like a fleet, right, or multiple fleets, really you position yourself to be the benefactor of that for that longevity, where it probably won't be easy to get into that when, right, there are already set fleets in every single town of the United States and the international global world. Shellfish, got your hand up.
You took my words right out of my mouth. Yeah, I really don't see people owning vehicles in the future. Think about, like, we haven't even like thrown in the fact that they still believe that we're going to have more pandemics, right? So if people are landlocked more and more, just because of like medical issues, climate change issues, where they say, we got more solar flares coming, or the grid has to go down because we don't have enough power, like any of these things, and we become more and more I don't want to say home ridden, but more and more at our home doing our jobs. Why would you want to keep paying car insurance, like car payments, all these things like out of pocket, when you can just go, you know what, I'm going to factor in how much it's going to cost to do the Uber or whatever, to pick me up. Or you could even, do right now, like you rent a car or whatever, you just factor that into your package deal for your trip, if you're going to a local place or whatever. I don't know. I can't even see, like, the maintenance alone on cars. Like, half the people can't afford the maintenance. Like, if you let it go, it's just such a hassle. And it's bad for the environment with all the stuff that goes wrong with it. You know, if you don't keep it up, and they depreciate as soon as you drive it off the lot. You already lose, what is it, like 10 or 15% of the value just by purchasing it. I mean, that's like absolutely
It's literally 50% of the value.
Is it 50%? And
Yeah,
and then you have what if you're lucky, you get like a 7 to 10% loan, like, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if you have your transmission blow out on you, that's like a $6,000 problem that all of a sudden you have no choice but to fix. And who has that kind of money laying around? Not most people. So it's imagine a future where, like I said, you have an app, you just pull it up like it's DoorDash or Uber or something, and you just have a car show up at your front door within a few minutes. You get in, and then as you're going on your trip, I mean, maybe it will cost. I mean, it could literally cost less than $1 a mile. I mean, that's crazy. You don't have to
T-Boone,
tip. Yeah.
what about driving your kids to school? Like right now, I waste, like, no lie. Like, I get up and I leave my house at 6:45, drop the kids off at 7:30, get back by like 8 o'clock. Have to do the same thing around 1:15. I go wait in the car line. I like waste so much gas and time doing that. If I had an EV car that was in the area, that you had to have like the school swipe it so they could like actually allow them in and out of the car, right? Not just a random stranger. You can't like have them take them to 7-Eleven or whatever. I mean, seems a little bit safer than some of these school buses that don't even have seatbelts on them nowadays. And they can still be interacting with their teacher. What if they're running late because of traffic, right? They could just put the smart board up in the car and still be learning the lesson in the class in the car.
I mean, the whole thing about EV is about how the batteries are sourced. They said it's even more toxic for the environment how the batteries are being sourced, and that way, I mean, other people are thinking that maybe there's something else they could be using besides how they're sourcing those batteries. Maybe some other form, like the last time you guys were saying.
Yeah, you cut out for me, Meta. I think Singularity's after you, man.
Yeah, you cut out for me too.
Okay, I wasn't going to say anything because I thought I was rugging again. So, but to his point, though, I do know what he's talking about with lithium and how bad that is and can be. I do know that I think it's the refinement process.
Don't last that long, years or something.
I don't know if you could hear me or not, but
Meta, are you? Can you hear us, Meta?
I don't take that as a no.
Yeah, I came down. I'll bring it back up.
All right, cool. But I think and I'm not an expert on this kind of stuff, but I think the refinement process is really the dirty part of, like you get the ore out of the ground, but then you go through a lot of really dirty chemical processes in order to extract the actual like raw lithium out of it and turn it into usable lithium that you could put in the batteries. And I think that's the part that's really bad. I don't know, but maybe, but lithium itself is like very abundant actually. And you can find it pretty much anywhere, like on any continent. So I think that we need to, like, it'd be really cool if we could mine and refine it like locally, and, do it in an efficient way that's not, using child labor and all this kind of stuff. I think if we really had, large enough demand for it, we could actually turn it into another major industry, like, making aluminum or anything else that we have. I don't know. I think if there's a will, there's a way kind of thing for that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like at the end of the day, large scale, like is that process of actually mining that out of the earth actually worse for the environment overall than, fossil fuel cars burning their fuel? I don't know the answer to it, but I don't think so. But again, I'm not an expert.
T-Boone, I had actually found some material that was showing that the byproduct from the EV batteries was like a hydrogen gas, and that they were working on the way to use that to fuel the hydrogen combustion engines, if I'm not mistaken. I can look it up for you again. I don't know or understand the mechanics behind it very well, but I thought it was pretty fascinating. If it was all like a self-contained system. Have you seen those before?
Well, I know that there's like hydrogen cell cars, but I think that's different than kind of like the standard EV that we think about with like what Tesla's making, for example. So they just use motors, just like induction motors, and so that is different. But there are, like, I know Toyota, I think, is trying to make a hydrogen cell car as well as an EV as well as standard cars, and I think they're stretching themselves way too thin, and I think they're going to screw themselves long term. They fired their CEO because he, I think, was kind of doing that and really not thinking ahead enough and trying to go and basically throw a whole bunch of stuff at the wall to see what would stick, kind of thing. And they were just not happy with his performance. And then they hired a new guy and he's doing the same thing. So I'm not really too bullish on Toyota, which is really a shame because, they were the ones that really invented like lean manufacturing. And that's kind of like the gold standard for how you like scale a complex, large scale product and, like how to properly run a factory and all this kind of stuff. But I just think that from a vision standpoint, I just don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but I just don't think that they're taking the threat seriously enough and they're not doubling down enough on EVs because, like I said, once it starts really moving at that exponential rate and we start to really notice it, because it's already at an exponential rate, but it's kind of like that hockey stick effect where it's like we're kind of still at that. I think we're just approaching the elbow, but once we get a little bit further, just a few more years out, it's going to be insane. Just the adoption, the demand, and companies that haven't spent the last 5-10 years ramping this stuff up full time are going to be left in the dust. Like they cannot possibly keep up with a company that's 5 years ahead of them on an exponential scale. They just can't do it. So I don't know of any other car company really that is like actually equipped to compete. They're just, because they're juggling, like they're trying to maintain their sales of ICE cars, but they're also trying to do this whole EV thing, and they're literally losing so much money on every EV sale because they're not scaled up. Like Ford just lowered their prices on, their F-150 Lightning, so they're losing literally $16,000 every time they sell one of these things, and like that's not scalable at all. Obviously, you can't just lose money like that. They're doing that in order to be competitive, to try to gain market share so that hopefully they can make profit in the future. But that's a very risky way to go, but they don't have a choice. So that's kind of where we are. And I don't know. I mean, it seems like, for me personally, like I only own Tesla stock as like a stock investor because I'm mainly into crypto, but I see Tesla as a massive, massive, massive opportunity still, even though, the stock has gone up and all that in the last couple of years. But I just think that they're nowhere close to actually being valued for what they're really doing and what they are capable of doing long term, in my opinion.
Yeah, because Tesla's not a car company. It's a chip making company in reality. Yes, much upside, I think. Shellfish, go ahead. And then Atomic Crypto, welcome up. You could speak after Shellfish if you'd like.
How long do we have today for your space? Because I have a topic change potentially if and when we're done, if we have more time.
Atomic, did you have something you guys speak about on the topic?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So I'm kind of on the back end of this discussion. I'm not going to dox myself, but I work at a nuclear power plant. And, one of the things that we see in our company is the adoption, like what T-Boone's talking about. and we're pushing it obviously because that's what we're selling. But a lot of people aren't thinking about the back end because that EV has to be charged from somewhere. You know, it's not magic. So I think if your concerns about EVs and things like that are valid, which they are, I have a lot of concerns about the battery technology, but I think that'll get worked out over time. Mine's more on the human rights issues. But, you know, people need to also be thinking about where their electricity is coming from, because we only have right now like 90-something nuclear reactors in this country, and more are being shut down because they're older. And if you're going to power this stuff, you got to have somewhere to power it. It's not going to be solar and wind. So that's just something to think about as, you know, that technology evolves, because I do think it's probably the way of the future because it's got first mover. You know, I love hydrogen, but I think EVs is first mover. So.
Where were you last week? No, just kidding. But I should go grab my posts from the DOE, or the Department of Energy.
Oh, what was it about?
We did a whole space on fusion energy and all of these different types of fusion and the different materials being used for newer types of fusion stuff.
Fusion is always 20 years away. Every 20 years, that's what we joke with in the nuclear field. So. No, but I mean, I'm biased. I love nuclear, but it's the only large-scale carbon-free energy out there. I don't know, just something to think about.
It has to produce when there's profit to be made for it, right? Big nuclear industry is. Why is somebody going to create a nuclear reactor and basically hand it out, right, and it be used for all of this free energy? Where's the profit to be made? And so this is, I think we'll see a lot more, and I wonder if you agree with me, small modular reactors being built and produced and sold to maybe cities and municipalities.
I hope so, but there's three big problems with small modular reactors: is regulatory frameworks, meaning that how they regulate and set up the ability to build those from the federal government cannot be the same rules and obstacles that they put in the way of current reactors. The second one is not in my backyard. So who wants a small modular reactor, whether it's 10 megawatts or 1,000 megawatts, who wants it in their backyard other than weirdo nerds like me? And the other one is how you deal with your workforce. So if they're required to have hundreds of security officers for a small reactor, that doesn't, you know, from an operations cost perspective, doesn't work. I mean, those are things that can be worked out, and I'm super hopeful for SMRs, but the government cannot put the same barriers and red tape on them if they're going to succeed. There has to be a positive regulatory framework. So anyways, I mean, I don't think you'll ever see large-scale nuclear reactor in the United States again. I just hope we move forward with small modular in a smart way.
My exact thoughts, and I hate to say it, but the typical hamperings on the tools that we could have enabled in our society, policy, right? This unfortunate symptom of having such a large structure. But I hope, nonetheless, just like you said, they've got it in the right direction.
I will say one last thing, and then I'll shut up about nuclear. Is the cool part is, out of all the things we're divided on, nuclear is becoming more of a bipartisan. Your typical left leaning is environment. Your typical right leaning is jobs and economic impact. So there's a lot of good positives about, from a political perspective. We just got to build more. China's building around 19 to 20 reactors right now. We only have 2 that are being finished now in the United States, with none planned. So, just thoughts.
I really thank you for coming up and sharing your information. I hope you stay in the space as a speaker too. I'll probably keep it going for another 15, 20 minutes or so.
Thanks, bud.
Hey, Tomic, I have a question for you. What are your thoughts about like large scale battery systems that would basically hold a charge, and if in the event that there's, you know, a power outage or grid failure or something like that, to have these battery systems kind of take up the load, and kind of regulate.
Yeah.
Like, do you think
This
that's
is
something that?
this is something.
Yeah, go for it.
This is something that my company is working on. I am less bullish on those things because people don't understand from a load perspective what is needed, and the batteries that would be needed. Now, as an auxiliary or ancillary type, technology that might have some promise, but I personally I can't imagine there would be enough batteries to power, like, say, the entire backup power of the city of Atlanta or something like that. Like, I just don't see that. And we're already at a point where batteries are, batteries are the issue for a lot of things, with like what we were just talking about, environmental, human rights type capital stuff. So it's like, yeah, maybe, but have just really reliable power grids. So I mean, I don't know. I'm not very, for me personally, I'm not very bullish on large scale utility batteries.
That's totally fair. The other thing that I'm kind of curious about is, like, when it comes to the grid itself, a lot of the grid is built obviously by like private companies, for-profit companies. And so, a company that wants to be profitable wants to minimize their costs in any way they can. And so typically the grid will, basically generate about as much power as is being demanded or is expected to be demanded. But now that we have a lot more like EVs and things like that coming on that require a lot more, there is no power to, provide, and it would require a massive investment in order to, kind of bolster the grid. And so I think that could be a pretty big problem going forward, and it's not easy to scale it, is it?
Yeah, well, I will tell you, though, that one of the things that large companies do well is planning. And I know, again, I don't want to give too much away here. Just I don't want to dox myself, which I don't think I am, but I don't care really. Is that, like the company I work for, they do what they call integrated resource planning, which they look at. They're not looking like a year ahead. They're looking like 10 to 15 years ahead to plan for what the needs are. And I mean, when you have a lot of people working for you, a lot of really smart people, that their job is to figure out what we're going to need and, and plan for it. From what I've heard and understood is that the more that EVs come online, at least in our region where I'm at, that they're ready for it. We're getting rid of all of our coal by 2030 and replacing most of that with nuclear and like 30% renewables. So we'll be like 50% carbon free. But then the other part's gas. So what you do is you have what's called base load, and that's nuclear. And then you build on top of that. Nuclear runs 100% of the time, all the time, 24/7. And then you build on top of that as demand increases. So whether it's hot, cold, demand is high or low, nuclear is always on. And then you build on top of that with the next cheapest that you can find, whether it's gas or hydro or solar, whatever like that. So it is kind of a concern, but I mean, that's why these companies that's why they're looking out so far at how they're planning, if they're doing it right. So.
That was awesome information.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, Shellfish, I know you had your hand up before. I don't know if you have a question that you want to ask, or if you want to change the subject now, please feel free to. Unless, Gene, I think I saw you on mute there for a moment.
I was shuffling my phone around, but I was just gonna say it's just great, hearing this information, getting these different perspectives, because it's almost like there's different types of energy that can be, utilized for power. So it's just, seeing those conversations happening, those thoughts in the back of my mind, or even back of everyone's mind, just going like, yeah, I've thought of this before, and someone coming in as the missing piece to, answer those questions. It's always good to see, us organically come together. And just to kind of talk on what T-Bone was talking about before, and, just to help summarize some of the things we can look at regulations for, even, for mining. I mean, instead of, having those blood mines, lithium blood mines, why don't we just use, instead of using death squad robots to, supervise people or put us through an authoritarian state, why don't we just use them to help mine, teach those individuals who are, risking their lives, getting cancer at a rapid rate, teach them how to program those robots, teach them, directionally where to go, direct those robots to put, those dangerous and hazardous materials into, safe contained areas. So, almost starting to take out the human element there, as opposed to just deploying robots at fast food restaurants. Why don't we use them for the most dangerous jobs first, then integrate them into these other jobs? But it's just, that's where it comes into regulatory frameworks. Like, there's got to be a proper way of doing this stuff.
Yeah, and hey, that's a great point. Like I was listening to the guy who kind of blew this open for me on Rogan, the Indian gentleman, I can't remember his name, but he was talking, he's done like all this human rights research on, really it was cobalt was the issue, I think, in some of the mines in Congo or one of those countries. And he said it was something as simple as giving people proper PPE, like something that's cheap, really. But a lot of times we outsource all of, as Americans, at least I'm speaking from the American perspective, we outsource a lot of our issues. And so these companies if they don't care about what's happening in Congo, then it's not going to translate to any kind of regulation here because they have no regulation there. And that's the sad part, is that, I just wish that kind of stuff could be fixed for, I like what you're saying, but also, like, I wouldn't want to take away those jobs from those people if we could somehow just make their lives better. You know what I'm saying?
No, exactly. And that's what I mean. Teaching them different skills, different life skills. Like, now, instead of just being in a death mine, essentially, or a cancerous mine, just mining this material that everyone, is still going to abundantly need for, devices until we are able to, utilize different energies, right? Let's go ahead and teach them how to start programming those robots. Even if it's putting a remote controller in their hand and letting them actually, direct those robots of where to go. Where would I, if they were there and mining it, how do I program this robot, or how do I teach this robot how to mine the way I was mining before? And essentially just teaching it that. So that way you're taking less of the human element, the physical human element out of it, but the human is still there as the controller, meaning, they can each control their robot. One, because you think, oh, okay, you're going to give them all a robot. Oh, this is going to be expensive. But if they're able, this robot doesn't get tired. So now you have rotational shifts. Now you can give these people, 8-hour shifts. You can, now you can introduce something to where they have a stable income. These robots are going to help provide that stable income anyway, with, how tireless it running 24/7 and for the times and points that there's needed for maintenance. Have certain days that, those robots are taking off for maintenance reasons, but it's integrating, those cultures and those groups of people into the technology and software that we're using now, as opposed to them just working barbarically.
Talking about what you just was saying about using robots and new technology, there's been study cases using the swarm robotics technology and blockchain to use robotics in such use cases as, like you said, down to using these different technologies for smart energy management, like how you guys were talking about earlier about solar electricity power and being able to scale and storage. There's a lot of projects that's been working towards all of that as such, even down towards regulation, where they have distributed generation, distributed energy, on-site generation, district to decentralized energy to distributed energy resources. They had a project called a system called Distributed Energy Storage System. They called it DES, and their systems, which manage the smart grid, which is like a framework for even smart cities to use to manage and storage their electrical grid. But not only that, being able to provide smart solutions for other grid that's around that one area, as to where they've been working on decentralized systems where even in rural areas where houses can be their own power grid that can perform and give excess power to their own grid and provide that sort of means, which there was a lot of regulatory issues with that, especially in the beginning days of the solar boom. I remember in Hawaii, in the beginning, the governments didn't really have control of who was getting electrical power, especially if they were off the grid. It was hard for them to manage as such until they found out and then made laws around it.
Yeah, that would be cool. You get to have solar panels and the government's not even bothering you about power usage at all.
Oh no, for real, Death. I had a lot of family members that do live off the grid, and in the beginning days of hooking up the solar panels, they're fully off the grid. Until now, there's laws that puts in place to where you have to register certain things, get permits and such to even get it on your house here in Hawaii. But now,
hopefully everybody was grandfathered in.
Oh no, yes, so yes, it was. So they were grandfathered in. But now I see a push where a lot of these companies have programs where you actually get paid for providing power back to the grid, which I see a lot of, and I see a lot of blockchain technology being able to help manage things as such. But there's also things getting done with the water supply market and logging industry to so much other things out there, like how you guys were talking about mining, cobalt, a whole lot of bunch of other things, with a lot of robotics and space technology for space mining. You got that swarm technology, which was first used in satellites some years ago to help manage them from not getting in contact with debris too much more. Now they're looking towards mining off of big asteroids, which a lot of the coordinations within the asteroid belt has been what you call recorded into certain systems, and which they use algorithms to help these satellites to pinpoint where they are, and also use AI, AR, and LiDAR to help see what kinds of metals and precious metals they have inside these certain asteroids to where they can pinpoint. They do that. It's just pretty crazy. We actually have that technology in all the cars, all the new cars we have. It's pretty dope to see all these things being utilized and using blockchain technology.
Hey, Dad, I'm gonna step down. I gotta run, going to roll some jiu-jitsu. So thank y'all for letting me be in here. Anytime I see you hosting, I'm jumping in. So
thanks very much, Atomic, and thank you for coming up and sharing the information you had. Industry specific information is always really, really enjoyable. Personally, I wasn't going to bring you up there, Cryptic, because I'm going to end the space in 5 minutes here. But I felt bad. I wanted to bring you up. Shellfish, though, you had your hand up before. If you wanted to bring up what you were going to speak about before, if you can, quickly, we'll go to you, Cryptic, and then I'll close up the space.
It was just going to be about solar flares and the sails that they're using to deploy. And anyway, we can save it for another day because I think it would go into a huge topic. And Cryptic obviously has something he would like to throw into the mix. So I'll be patient and wait till Thursday.
Yeah, we could do Thursday. We could do space travel and stuff, solar flare, solar sails is definitely something that, it's already a use case in space travel. So, but Cryptic, man, go ahead.
Make it real fast. So I've been working on this report on SpaceX with the satellite dishes of low orbit satellite dishes. So now connected up how they're going to interact with the new migration of the technology with the blockchain and crypto. I have found a great resource, and soon I will be writing a report about it, and it's all how everything's going to be connected to the next Web 3.0. That's it. Is keep I will send it to you, Death Ranger, later on, and you can look at it, and then if you like, you can publish it. It's going to be a good something that no one has seen before.
Yeah, listen, hey, if you have information you want to send me a piece of information about something, please feel free to. I'll look into it for sure. But that being said, this was an incredible space. It is. I feel like it's always an incredible space. I mean, such great minds, different perspectives, and a diverse amount of information you guys really bring to the space. So it wouldn't be what it was if it wasn't for you guys coming every day. 808, Gene, Shellfish, T Boone, Cryptic. Really, thank you guys for all coming. Atomic. We'll be back Thursday, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. I love you all, and everybody have a good rest of the night. Night, everybody.
Oh, yeah, bro.
Night,
That
guys.
space was super excellent. Nuclear industry. Oh, love it. Oh, he's in the DOE, isn't he? He's in the DOE, man. Okay, I just got the vibe, bro. He's got the vibe. Love that he came into the space, man. Thank you. Thank you guys for sending people in there with great information. Who is TB? And who are they as a speaker? That was the first time he was in the space and spoke. I can't fumble because I got no more fever. I actually really liked that. It was great. I don't think he meant to come up today, T-Boone, as always.